what got you kind of interested in on the computational side of musicology?
Yeah, so since the first dot-com bust around 2000, 2001, I've been working on the side as a programmer, but that was in a different world than my music world. They really weren't intersecting, except for a couple far visionary professors who encouraged this. It wasn't something that was at all encouraged. We didn't have any classes on this when I was in college or graduate school. But over time, the algorithms I was using for for helping people do at that time it was economics research online using technology. I began to see more and more, wait a second, these are things that we can use to help us in our understanding of large quantities of music. For instance, I mean, uh, when we think about musical style in, say the 1780s, 1790s, 1800 or something, we're thinking of a few people that we know, uh, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven. But to understand musical style, we also want to look at thousands of scores, and of all these people who have been forgotten, but because their music might not have been so innovative, but these are the people whose who tell us about what the norms of style were happening. And none of us have time to listen to 10,000 symphonies from the time, but the computer can. The computer's interested in that. And so these were questions that came together. My own particular research at the time was on 14th century music, which exists in a whole bunch of little ripped up fragments here and there. And sometimes with only 10 notes or 15 notes each. And I realized we were never going to be able to identify all of them and see, hey, is this a piece we already know that here's an Italian fragment, and is it a piece that we only thought existed in, in England or something like that? And how can we find all these things? So I realized that with a computer, we could do comparison of every little fragment against every other little fragment and find all these quotations. And that really motivated my own development as a computational musicologist, as we call it. So one of the places I thought we could really learn to innovate the most using computers and music, and that was in the teaching of music theory and music fundamentals, and how to compose, how to analyze music, and how to make all these interesting structures. And what I feel like is, in order to become a composing musician, an analyst, a thinking performer, you need two things. You need to have your creativity encouraged, break rules, do new and interesting things, but also have a foundation for understanding how music has happened in the past, how norms of behavior tend to happen. You can do anything you want, but what tends to happen in a bebop song or in a classical sonata. And so um, these two different poles of creativity and learning the rules that have existed seem to be something that could be separated slightly, so that a teacher, a human being, could really be the place where creativity happens the most, and that the learning of the basic rules and how they work together could be something that could be moved online, and where you could have infinite feedback and infinite new ways of trying this out. And so for that point, I created with my colleagues Artusi, which is an interactive music theory platform. And Artusi is named after one of the famous curmudgeons who, in music history, who advocated for let's learn by rote, let's learn to do things the way they have always been done. And so we will free up the teachers to be more creative while we do more of the music theory that's existing online.
Have you seen much changes in the area that you're in, especially with the progression that a lot of technology has made towards well, using AI and specifically ML and sort of recurrent neural networks and all sorts of different types of neural networks, really, on analyzing sort of data sets and trying to, has there been any change in your work with any of that progress, or has it kind of remained the same?
in the audio domain, in searching through, tons of audio recordings, we've made huge progress thanks to artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning algorithms. In the score based domain, where we're working on tens, still huge numbers, but a lot smaller numbers of pieces, it hasn't had that huge of an impact yet, but it's about to. It's right around the corner. One of the things that is very important is that all of these algorithms either need enormous data sets, or if they're going to be a little bit smaller, they need specialized domain knowledge. So we need to be able to figure out, how does voice leading work? If we're going to be talking about a musical style, we need to be able to say, hey, does this music have parallel fifths? Is this something that we can extract from the score data? And so we need to build specialized machine learning sort of helpers, feature extractors, science call them, in order to make these machine learning with musical scores, with classical music, even stronger. There's a second point that we need, and that's the very human point. For instance, when I'm working with all these 14th century and medieval and Renaissance pieces, a large number of them are anonymous. And I do believe with some of the artificial intelligence and clustering and classification algorithms, I've been able to give composers' names to many of these pieces. But here's the thing: when I was working with the quotations, there's a right answer. You can look at that quotation, you can look at this piece and go, "Yep, those are the same. I see it immediately," and nobody's going to argue with you, especially if it's a long enough quotation. With an attribution, once the computer spits out, hey, here's the most likely answer at 98% confidence rating, you're not done yet. Now you have to convince other people of that. And especially when some anonymous piece is a thing of great beauty and just something that everybody would want to hear. And then you attribute it to, Billy No Name instead of a well-known composer. Well, your work still has to be done. It still has to go on and say, why can Billy No Name write a piece of such interest? So there is always a human side with computational work in music, and I think that's how it should be. Well,
Okay.
thank you, Neil.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, Michael.
Thank you.